Welcome to Disruptive Successor, a show for next generation leaders in family businesses and entrepreneurs who want to disrupt the status quo and take their existing business to a whole new level. We all know that what got us here isn't going to get us there. This show will provide inspiration, advice, and resources to help you create massive impact. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Hi, it's Jonathan Goldhill, and welcome back to another episode of the Disruptive Successor Show. On today's show, I'm going to give you a tip. This is going to be a solo episode, and I'm going to give you a tip that I think is really the silver bullet of all the tools in my toolbox. I've been using this tool and variations of it since 2004, and I believe that the use of this tool not only changes the way that my clients think about their business, but it changes the way they think about their lives. And it is just the absolute most productive tool in my toolkit. And this tool is based on the concept of practicing your 80-20 principle. It's the vital few and trivial many. So it's got various variations. I'm going to go through some of those variations by different companies whom I've been associated with, share with you on screen the tool. So you might want to follow along on YouTube while I queue up these different tools and then walk you through them. So take a moment, pause, shift over to YouTube if you like, and let's take a look at these different tools. Okay, so if you're following along with this tool, the first one I'm going to show you is a time and priority management tool. And all of these tools are basically time management, priority management tools. And like I said, they have various variations. This first one was introduced to me in 2003 by an organization called the Growth Coach. And it was based on Stephen Covey's 80-20 principle, which is about practicing the 20% of things that you get 80% of your results from, or the things that you give you massive results in your business are going to be those vital few. These are the most important, highest value, highest and best use of your time and talents. And you have to figure out ways of maximizing your time and talents on these activities. You have to come up with strategies, which I'm going to share with you in a few minutes. One of the most productive strategies to focus on your vital few. But first, you have to also identify what are those trivial many. These sometimes are loathsome, low-value activities. They're a waste of your time and talents, and you need to make commitments to delegate, delete, downshift, destroy the frequency of, but somehow you need to change them. All right? Now let's switch over to another tool. Okay, so a variation of this tool is really to figure out, what is it that you're really great? And this Gay Hendricks, who's a psychologist, published this in his book, The Big Leap, in 2009. And he wants you to break down the things that you are genius at, the things that you are excellent at, the things that you're competent at, and the things that you are incompetent. And take a look at these different zones. So your zone of genius is really the things that you love and you're great at. And this is a set of activities that you are uniquely suited to do. They draw upon your special gifts and your strengths. Now, the zone of excellence, these are things you do extremely well and can make a really good living at. But this is where others want you to stay. And this is where you could delegate if you could find someone who could do it 80% as well. Now, these are what I would call the things. The zone of excellence is what you like and you're good at. The zone of competence is a zone where others can do these things just as well as you can. And you ought to think about delegating these to others. And then, of course, there's the zone of incompetence. And this is the zone where others can do these things better than you can. You dislike them. You're not good at them. And so this 2x2 matrix is a good place for you to look at where is the best use of your time and talent, and for you to look at your activities, a month, a day, or a week, whatever time frame you like, but long enough to get enough data and to put them into these different quadrants. Okay, so now let's look at another variation of this. And so this is a tool put out by EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. This is their Delegate and Elevate. And this is basically that same form as Gay Hendrix's. Super practical, super fill-outable, and people seem to really love this. And I get a lot of feedback about how this is a game changer. Now, another colleague of mine put forth recently that this is the 4 simplest steps. It's the same 4 boxes, but he labeled them as no, not me, later, and now. And he said these are the basic time management principles. And no is say no to what does not directly support your business. And say not me to that stuff that relates to your business, but someone else could do. And say later or say not now to those things that can be done by you, but are not urgent. And then say now to those that are urgent and must be done by you. So the concept in all of these is to try to prioritize what your most important and most productive habits are. And, I'm talking about not just habits, but gifts. What are your most productive gifts and where should you be spending your time? And so James Clear is an author of a book called Atomic Habits. You might pick up a copy. He tells a great story, which I've told many times in my workshop. I learned about it through Vern Harnish and his book, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. And it's about Ivy Lee, who was a publicist and like a productivity consultant. And he was invited to come in to Charles Schwab of Bethlehem Steel, who was one of the wealthiest men in the world. And Charles Schwab asked Ivy Lee if he could work with his top executives and have his top executives perform more effectively. And so what he did was he spent 15 minutes watching and observing and then talking to each of the top executives. And he gave them a productivity tip. And he said to do the following. He said, list the 6 most important things that you need to do tomorrow when you come into work. And then prioritize those 6 things. And then work single-handedly at each task. In other words, without multitasking. Focus on one task at a time until it's done before you move on to the next. And then continue to repeat that habit day in and day out. And so when Ivy Lee gave this advice to Charles Schwab, initially said, what should I pay you? And he said, nothing, pay me what you think it was worth. And in 3 months later, a check for $25,000 was sent to Ivy Lee. Now, this is back in 1918. And the value of that check today would be $575,000 in 2023 dollars. So take what's the price tag of having your people and yourself prioritize your most important activities and focus on them first. And here's why it's so effective is 1, it's simple enough to actually work. It's just basically organizing all of the things that you have to do, removing the complexity and nuances, and focusing on the most important stuff. Now, obviously emergencies pop up. And so what do? You get back on track just as quickly as you can because unexpected distractions will arise. And so, plan accordingly. I always tell my clients that a best practice is to plan 2/3 of your day and allow for 1/3 to just take over from, what shows up. So another reason why this productivity method works is it forces you to make tough decisions. There's nothing magical about the 6 tasks. It could be 4, it could be 5, it could be 3. But what's magical is about imposing limits upon yourself, imposing a time frame, a constraint to get it done. I know when I wrote my book, I tried to write each chapter in 55 minutes or 50 minutes, I believe it was. And I set myself like an egg timer and I had a clear outline. And then I just wrote as fast as I could in as organized a fashion. Yeah, I could have spoken it, but I was given a time constraint. And by doing that, it forced me to write my chapters faster. Now, Ivy Lee's method is similar to Warren Buffett's 25-5 rule, which requires you to focus on just 5 critical tasks and ignore everything else. Sound familiar? Sounds like the 80-20 principle, which is what I showed you earlier in the Vital Few and Trivial Many worksheet. Now, the other thing is by doing this behavior, it removes any friction in starting up a task because the biggest hurdle to finishing most tasks is starting them, just getting started. And when you think about it the night before, you decide that evening what is your path the next day. And when you get up, you don't waste time thinking about or debating over a cup of coffee or two. What do I need to do this day? You know immediately what you need to do to get started. And finally, it requires you to do a single task. Modern society loves multitasking, as James Clear points out in his book. The myth of multitasking is that being busy is synonymous with being better, but the exact opposite is true. Having fewer priorities leads to better work. Study world-class experts in nearly any field: athletes, artists, scientists, teachers, CEOs, business leaders, and you'll discover one characteristic runs through all of them, and that is focus. Focus. Follow one course until successful. Okay? So you can't be great at one task if you're constantly dividing your time 10 different ways. Mastery requires focus and consistency. So focus, follow one course until successful. And the bottom line is do the most important thing first each day. It's the only productivity trick you need. Also, figure out what you're great at. Focus on being in your zones of genius and in your zones of excellence. Figure out how to move yourself more into your zone of genius and know what your priorities are over the coming weeks and months, and drive the same kind of behavior and knowledge and learning throughout your entire organization so that everyone is delegating and elevating themselves, ultimately building out a larger organization with clear roles, clear responsibilities. Everyone knows what they're doing. The boat will row in the same direction because everyone will know how to row in a uniform manner. So I hope you found this productivity tip useful, and I look forward to sharing more of these productivity tips with you in the near future. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website,
where you can schedule your free strategy session.
Thank you for joining us on the Disruptive Successor podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, review, and share with a friend who would benefit from the message. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, go to disruptivesuccessor.com.